So everybody has an open blank Microsoft Excel document right in front of you. So like any document, you have toolbars, you have tables. So just to make sure everybody know that we have each of these items, you were supposed to read about it at home for notes, called cells. Cells have addresses. Address is the column and the row. So if I say E2, you find column E, row 2. If I say C5, you go to C5, right? So it's like coordinates. Now, other important piece, like always, I show you something and I make a pause. You watch when I'm doing it. You don't talk to each other. You don't like look at your screen. You look here so that you don't get behind. Because we only have as much time as we have, and we need to make sure that you also have some time to actually play with it. So, the very first thing, what we are going to do is, we're going to make developer tab available. By default, that tab is hidden, and that's where all the cool stuff is. So, you click on File, and you go to Options. And under Options, you should see Customize Ribbon. Does everybody see that? Click on that. And notice on the right side, the only tab which is not clicked is Developer, and you want to check it. This is a computer thing. In other words, at home you have to do it, but you only have to do it once. After you've done it, Developer tab will always be there. On these computers, of course, it's not, because it's a clean slate after every time the computer is rebooted. So if you come and work here, you have to turn on Developer tab every time. And then you click OK, and notice Developer tab appears on the top. So, we're going to use Developer tab to put all those scrollers or spinners. We'll choose what we need. But you also need to make sure that you know how to format the cells before we put any information. So remember, your exploration has to have a title and then has to have instructions for students. And that needs to be provided in a proper format. Because if each cell is very small, so if you don't provide enough space, when you lock it, students won't be able to see a whole instruction. It will be hidden. So in order to do that, here's what we're going to do. We're going to select B2 through G2 for our title. B2 through G2 cells. Now, right-click and choose Format Cells on the whole selection. The Format Cells window opens up, and here's what we are going to do with you here. Under Alignment, click on Alignment. Do you see text controls? You want to check Wrap Text and Merge Cells. This way, it will be one space for title, and text will wrap, means that the cell will get bigger and bigger, and if you have to put something larger, and the students will be able to see everything. It's not going to go beyond or behind the other cells. And since it's a title, you may also want to select under text alignment, you may want to select centered, right? Because it's always nice for title to be centered. And for vertical alignment, you can also select centered or top. Bottom is not the best way for the text. And then click OK. So here's a title. So I'm just going to put word sample title of activity. Remember, title of activity represents the topic of your activity. So if you're doing exploring measures of central tendency, right? You may have a title, measures of central tendency. If you're doing congruency of triangles, then you'll say congruency of congruency of triangles. If you're doing exploring quadratic functions, you'll call it exploring quadratic functions. So your title is what it is about. Now, in our case, for simplicity right now, remember I said that you have to have at least two parameters which are varied by either sliders or spinners. So we are going to, I'm going to just use M and B like it's a slope and y-intercept, because that's the example I gave you. So we're kind of going to try to work out the example, since you cannot use that topic anyway, because it's an example. So let's choose B4 as our cell, next cell. You can choose any cells you want, but for us to be able to work through, let's choose exactly what I'm asking you to, so this way it's easier for you to follow. So in B4, we are going to type M equals and that's just a text. And that means in the next cell there will be a number, right? Which is going to be m equals. So I want this to be right justified. So if you look over here, there is a justification under alignment, so that it shows like m equals and the number follows right by it. And then in B7, I'm going to do the same, but say b equals. And again, make sure you click out of it and then do right justify. There is two modes for selection cells. If you click inside the cell and type things, you're in editing mode, so you cannot change justification. But you can, so double click on any cell allows you to type inside. Just clicking once in a cell allows you to select the cell. So if you double click, you can change whatever you typed. But if you single click, you can do justifications and alignments and everything like that. Now, we would like to create a number for this cell, and we want this number to vary and be controlled by a slider or a spinner. Since spinners and sliders can only work with whole numbers and positive numbers, if we want the negative numbers, we have to do some calculations. So let's imagine that we want slope to change between -5 and 5. Okay, so here I want to have a number which will change between -5 and 5. But the spinner can only be changing from 0 up. So I can have a spinner from 0 to 10 and then subtract 5 from that. Does that make sense? So in D, let's see what I had here. So in the cell C4, let's put a formula that whenever you put formula, you have to put equal sign first. And I'm going to type C5 minus 5. Means I'm going to be, my actual positive numbers would be in C5, but I'll hide them later. But students will only see from -5 to 5. And press enter. It shows -5 because nothing in Excel means 0. And C5 right now has nothing, right? Now, in the C7, we do the same thing, and let's also assume -5 to 5 for B. So you now are going to put equals C8 minus 5. Also want to point your attention that whenever you type an address of a cell, it is automatically selected, so you know which cell you chose, right, as your reference. Let's go back to C4. Click once. Right click on it. Do you see option define name? Choose that option. This is a very useful option because sometimes you may forget which cell was what. So if you have your variables, it's better to call them, and then this way it's easy to recall these variables and not try to think about, oh, which cell was my whatever. So define name, and it already says M because it sees M next to it. So we call OK. Another reason for doing that is the following. In Excel, when you do fill down options, if you didn't log some cell as a single, like we may have a fill down for a table and M, but then it will fill down instead of C5 will take 6, 7. But if it's a variable, it will just log that cell and only use that value. So similarly, let's define this as B. So right click on this one, define name, and it has a B already in, so it's B. Now, the sliders. Click on Developer tab. Now, there is a lot of stuff here. I'm not going to teach you all of it, but some of you who might be interested in Excel, you may find the YouTube videos because it allows you to create absolutely incredible things, but it is a lot of work to learn. We only think we're going to use is controls. So, do you see controls group? If you insert, click down, you'll see several different controls. We're only going to use a form controls. We're not going to use ActiveX controls. And there are several options here. So notice that you have a spin button. So this is a button which just has up and down arrows. This button is good when you want students only to change by integer, and you can set up by what interval. On the second row, you see the thing which is called scroll bar. This is where you can move it smoothly, okay? It's like a slider. So for right now, we're gonna choose this one. And it can be both vertical, horizontal. Notice little plus came like a cursor. It allows you to draw where you want it. So we're gonna do it from, let's say, cells D4 to, I don't know, G4, something like that, a long scroll bar. Just draw it like you would draw anything. After you drew it, it is now selected. Notice it's selected, right? So we're going to format it to link to a right cell. Right-click on a spinner. And you should see option Format Control. So everybody see that. Choose that option. Here is where you are going to set up its values. Okay, when somebody misses something, we're going to do the same exactly thing for B. So Kellyanne, just watch until we get to the second part so that you don't get distracted people around you. And we're repeating the same exact instructions for B. So format control. What if we want -5 to 5 and we subtracted 5 means the lowest minimum value is 0, right? What our maximum value? 10. So just erase like that last 0 or type 10 over. Do we want it to go by 1? So we keep it by 1. Page change doesn't matter here, but cell link is very important because we're linking it to a cell. So click on this little box which of a red arrow inside, and it allows you to click on the cell which you want to link it. And remember, we link it to C5. That's which formula is based on. So you click on C5. It puts it right in here. Then you click back here and click OK. Now, if you click outside the slider and then try to move the values of the slider, you see that it changes the value in C5, which automatically changes the value of the slope. And you can either drag it back and forth, or you can use those left and right arrow to drag it. Make sure it's unselected, then you can drag it. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing for B. Okay, so if something didn't work, that's your chance to do the same thing or practice. So, under Developer tab, in the controls, you choose Insert drop-down menu. From the second row, you choose the third item, which is called Scroll Bar. And then you draw a rectangle to put that scroll bar from D7 to G7, right underneath one we just did. And that drew a scroll bar. It's already selected. So all you need to do is to right-click on it and select Format Control. Which opens Format Control window. Same thing, right? We said -5 to 5, so the same changes. From 0 to 10 it should be. And cell link, we're linking it to C8 now, right? So you click on this thing, click on the cell, C8, click back on the link, and click OK. Again, you cannot drag things while it's selected, but if you click outside, deselected, now it can change. So M and B now are changing. So this is how you can put spinners or sliders. Spinners work exactly the same way, but you're gonna draw, it's either would be left, right arrow, up, down, so there will be no bar to scroll, but will be just two arrows, up, down, or left, right, depending how you draw it, okay? You have to have minimum 2, but you can have as many as you want. You're doing quadratic, you may have 3, okay? You have to so what's important here? Once again, in terms of assignment requirement, you have minimum 2 spinners or scrollers. They are linked to a cells, and then there is a calculated value. M and B are calculated. And they're calculated using cell reference. Now, you might not see that cell reference, so let's make sure we see it. Click on View tab. And notice that formula bar is unchecked, right? Check the formula bar. So anytime you want to make sure the formula is correct, I click right now on C4 and I see a formula, right? In the formula bar. So that allows me to check that all my formulas. If I have a mistake in a formula, I can then go in this line and correct it. Something is not working. That's how you see the formulas. So you do want to see the formula bar while you're creating this thing. You'll have to turn it off along with other things when you're actually finalizing, formatting your stuff. Now, if we want to create a graph of a line, we need to have some data table, right? Which will have X values and Y values. So we right now just going to only create 3 points, but you know, for students, you may have more than 3 points for them to see a line. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use cells B10 and C10 for our table. So in B10, just type X, and then C10 type Y. So we're creating now a table. Now, in X, all I need is X values, right? So if I'm looking at a coordinate graph, usually you want all 4 quadrants, right? So let's say X changing, we're going to be very simple today, from -5 to 5. So type -5 here, -5. What's the next number of -5 after -5? -4. Now I have 2. That's enough for the Excel as a pattern. So select this 2. And as soon as you select this 2, there is a little black square in the top, bottom right corner. Do you see that? You can just drag that below until it fills, and you're dragging it until, I drag too much, until B21, right? You can always drag back. So now we have our X values from -5 to 5. Y values have to be calculated based on Y equals mx plus b, right? Making sure everybody's where I am. Everybody has X values, right? Put your cursor inside cell C11. Now, we need to put a formula here. So you put equal sign. And here's a nice part. Remember we called M and B. So you can just type M. And it recognizes the variable M. Then you put Shift 8 for star. That's multiplication sign. Then our X is next, right next to it. So you have to click on this cell or type it's a B11, whichever way you prefer. But we're multiplying M by X value. So you can click on the cell or you can just type B11 plus and then B, right? And it recognizes that because we named it. And press enter. It calculated. And now formula is here. All you need to do is drag down, fill down to calculate all the other Y values. So click on the cell. Make sure to press enter for formula to be accepted. After you type the formula, press enter. This is the formula we typed right in the formula bar. After you pressed enter, make sure you select the whole cell, right? And then drag down that little square, just drag down, and it calculated for us all those values. Well, it's whatever it is, right? Your M and B different from mine. So all of us may have different numbers here, right? Now notice if you now change how Y values are changing when you're changing the cursor. When you're changing scroll bar, right? M or B, your values are changing. Does everybody see that? So you've just created some form of interaction. Students now can change M and B. All we need is to get a visual. Now, before visual, let's make sure that when this is actually looks like a table. Right now it doesn't. I mean, because all those grid lines we're going to hide. So select your table, this whole thing, what you have, including X and Y. We're going to add borders to the cells. Okay? So when you selected this whole thing, again, right-click, format cells, and on the top you see word border, and you want outline, and you also want inside. And you click OK, and notice how this appeared here. So now we have a data table, appropriately in mathematics, in a table, right? Now time of a chart. I want to make sure all of you looking at the screen so that I know you finished the previous step. Now, this is a bivariate set of data. So the only way to graph it is to choose what kind of graph? Scatter plot. So remember what we do. We select only numbers. We go to insert, and you choose scatter, and you choose not connect, just regular scatter plot. Actually, you can select connected scatter plot because we know it's going to be a line, right? Because we want a line, we don't want just points. And you should see a chart appeared with your points and a line, right? Scatter plot, and I chose the second option, right? Connected scatter plot. Well, good. I don't need a series here, so I'm going to delete that. Now, we already talked about how to enter title and labels. You will have to do that, okay? I'm not going to do that right now, but you know how to do it. You can choose from layouts. You can choose it manually. The handout tells you how to do it manually so that you can follow handout if needed for that. What I do want to talk about is how to make sure that your axes are locked and not changing automatically. So we're going to talk about choosing the formatting the axis. It's very important when you talk with students. You don't want, when they change the numbers, look right now, if I'm going to change my axis is changing, right? So it's not like I don't see changing in the graph because the axis is changing. And that's not appropriate because students won't see what's really needs to be happening. So we have to make sure that the axis, coordinate axis, stay the same when we change the line, okay? So in order to do that, here is what you need to do. We are going to first select the axis. Let's start with our horizontal axis. Click on the horizontal axis, on the values. It is selected. Now, on the top, do you see word format, tab, format? Click on that one. Format tab. And in the ribbon, if you selected horizontal axis, in the very left, it tells you current selection, horizontal axis, right? Does everybody see that? Right over here. And it says format selection. That's what you want to choose. Format selection. The window pops up. Notice everything is auto right now. That's what we're going to change. Minimum, instead of auto, you select fixed. And you think about it. X, what's the minimum X for us? -5. So you make sure, -6 probably is good because you want them to, or maybe -5, it's fine because it's a line. You don't want them to see the end of the line. So -5. Maximum, 5. Major unit. What do you want to be major unit? You probably want them to count by ones, right? So we put 1. And the minor unit we're not going to show, so we don't need to worry about it. Unless you do want a minor unit, then you say it fixed, and probably 0.5 would be appropriate. But you don't have to show minor unit. Okay, are you guys okay? Are you ready to? Yeah, I put 0.5, but it's not necessary because we may not even show it. We only may show major ticks. This is for minor ticks. Now, see, like here it says major ticks, major unit, and it says outside, which is fine, and minor ticks none. So it doesn't matter what I chose here. It's not going to show unless you want it to show for minor ticks. Axis labels next to axis, which is fine. And vertical axis crosses. In mathematics, you always want it to cross at origin, right? So axis value is 0, 0, 0, right? And click OK or close. So now this is fixed. We're going to now fix y-axis. So click on the vertical axis on your graph. And you should see change, right? It says vertical axis here, format selection. Now we have to think. Remember, our vertical axis values are changing, right? So you have to think about what's the maximum possible and minimum possible values are going to show so that the graph makes sense. So the line changes, but graph doesn't. So if we had slope from -5 to 5, let's take largest slope, right? And the b value largest is 5, and our largest x value is 5. That's like 5 times 5 plus 5, right? So 30. So in minimum probably -30, right? Now you may want to be like, yeah. So let's do -30 to 30. Now, how do you want to count? What's your major units going to be? If it's from -30 to 30, you probably don't want a 1, right? 5 is good, right? And the minor doesn't matter, we're not going to show it. And the same, axis value is at 0. And click close. So now if I'm changing slider, notice how axis doesn't change, but line does change. So it's much easier to observe what's going on, right? Now there are a couple of few things which needs to be done here. Like you, of course, want to make sure that this thing is not on top of sliders, right? So that the students can actually use the sliders. And they can now observe what's happening, right? But you see that those lines, maybe you don't want those lines, those grid lines. So you may want to like hide them. So it's all under formatting. So if you are selected right now, grid lines and so on. So let's talk about formatting of your chart, a little formatting of your chart. So a couple of things here. So one thing is, do you want students to see grid? Or you don't want the students to see the grid on the chart? You make a decision, depending on what you want them to do with the graph. If they have to read the values, you want to see vertical grids, right? And those grids. If you don't want them to see those, you may want to format this. So this is called vertical axis major lines. So I choose whatever you select as format. And you may say no line. And those will not appear anymore. So you have just a graph and 2 axes and no grid. So once again, we had a line like this, goes across, it's called value lines, grid lines. If I don't wanna, you will format, no line. So now on my graph, notice I just have 4 quadrants and a line. The other thing is, you may want to have outline around your chart. You may not want to have outline. You can also change that, like shape fill, shape outline. It's all over here. So you can format your chart area. So choose formatting appropriate. Under Format tab, right on the selection, if you drop down here, it tells you everything you can format. So you can select here what you want to format, and then you can choose format selection, and then you select the options, okay? So as I said, don't forget about labels and title. But now let's talk about this thing. Students don't need to see these 2 values. Do you agree on that? These were values intermediate for us to calculate, right? They don't need to see these values. So what I'm going to talk about right now is in your assignment document on formatting, okay? You can hide cell values. without delete. You can't delete them. If you delete them, everything is ruined. But you can hide it. So how you do that? Click on cell C5, right click, choose format cell. Under format cell popped up, select number tab. And then select option custom. Now, I'm gonna right now tell you what code you need to put in to hide things. It's in the handout, but you will have to search for it a lot. It's not like anywhere. So notice under custom, right here it says word type, right? And then there is a thing which says general. Highlight and delete the word general. You need to put 3 semicolons here in order to hide. Whenever you want to hide anything without, you just put 3 semicolons and click OK. And notice how that it's just hidden now. You can still see in the formula bar there is a number here, but it's like looks empty, right? Do the same with C8. Right click on C8, format cells, number tab, choose custom, delete word general and put 3 semicolons. So this is in your handout, so that you know easily how to do it. So any intermediate calculations you did that you don't want students to see, that's what we do. You hide them this way. Next step. So remember, I didn't do it with you here, but you will have to have on top space for instructions and the space for students to put their name and date, and equations either to the right and the bottom. That's up to you. But here's the thing. Let's say you did what I just did and you, oh shoot, I forgot instructions, right? So what you need to do, you need to insert cells here to put instructions. So put your cursor right here where are the row numbers, right click and you choose insert. So that inserted like one row, right? So, and we want to put instructions here. So let's select a region for instructions. Maybe my instructions will go from B to H. So remember what we do. We merge and we wrap, right? So right click, format cells, and under alignment, you select wrap text and merge cells. And click OK. Now, double click inside that and just do blah, blah, blah. I just want you to see what happens when you put a text in here. What happens when you reach the end of it. Notice what happens. It makes the cell taller, wider, like the height of the cell changes, but all text you could see and everything else is shifted down, right? So that allows you to make sure that students see, doesn't matter how much instructions you put, if cells are merged and wrapped, and text is wrapped, that means you can type all instructions you need, and whatever you've created underneath is not going to get messed up. Okay? Actually, I was wrong about that. And now we need to adjust the height of the cell. So it is wrapped up, but if you click out of it, you only see that one little cell, right? And they will not see your instructions. So now you need to make sure you change the height of the cell to adjust to your text. There's several options for that. One option is just manually. If you move cursor right between 3 and 4, and see that little cursor appears like you can drag, then you can drag this thing, that border, underneath until and adjust it so that your text fits perfectly without any extra space, and students can see your instructions. Okay? Another option to assign a specific height, if you know in advance. Another option to merge cells vertically as well, so you have more than one row when you want to type, if you know how many rows you need. Name and date, same ideas, right? You'll put a word name and then you'll create a space for students to type in name, make sure the space is appropriate. So, separate cells because you don't want them to. So what you would do, let's put A4, put word name. And then I'm going to merge cells B4 through E4. Format cell, wrap, and merge. So that's the space for their name. And then in F4, I can put word date and merge G and H for date. Select G4 and H4, format cells, wrap, and merge. So now these two cells are for students to enter information. There will be questions. We're not going to talk about questions. But what is important right now, when you're going to protect this worksheet, you want students to be able to put their name in, to put the date, to be able to move the slider, right? Means they should be able to change the values which are hidden here, and then to be able to type in questions, which you have questions to type in the answers, so there will be space for answers. By default, when we protect, everything is protected. So you have to unlock the cells which you want to allow to vary. In order to do that, here's what you do. Click on the cell for the student name. We're going to do it for one cell right now, then I'll show you how to do it for all cells at the same time. Right-click, format cells. You see the last tab says protection. Click on that. By the way, everything what I'm showing you is in the handout, in writing. So you have video, handout, and you probably some of you taking notes and doing it. Notice there is a locked, right? Uncheck that thing and click OK. Now, if you want to unlock more than one cell at the same time, you need to select cells by holding Control key. So hold Control key, click on these cells which we had for the date, right? And then remember C6 and C9 were our values for the spinner. They all have to be selected if we want to unlock them at the same time. We can do one at a time. But you will also have 5 questions, so you will have 5 more cells selected. Now right-click, choose Format Cells, and under Protection, make sure that the locked box is cleared. That means that whenever we are going to protect this worksheet, those cells will remain open for students, and they can change the stuff. Click OK. Now, you will change the names here. You'll do like this is kind of a draft because it's still not clean. There's too much stuff. There is grid lines. There is ruler. There is stuff. You will have to really hide everything what's unnecessary. After you develop everything, before you protect, you're gonna hide everything unnecessary, and that's under View option. So if you go to View, notice that you've got formula bar checked. You uncheck that. Headings checked, you uncheck that. Grid line checked, you uncheck that. So your worksheet looks like a piece of paper. Okay? Now, in this case, if you have like students want to watch this, this may be a little bit too much for them. Notice like there is 10 values, right? And for some of you special need kids, it would be very hard to follow. So that's why for some of stuff like tables, you need to have alternating colors. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to highlight the header, and you can do it as through right-click everything, or you can do on the Home tab, and there is a little fill in, right? Fill color, and choose very, very light gray, or some pastel colors, so they can easily see it. Do nothing dark, like the top row is perfect. So this makes it headings, and then for the values, alternate colors, like white or something else. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold Control. So watch what I'm doing. Hold Control. I'm going to select every other row. And then I'm going to fill it with color. So this way now, you know how on the papers when you complete, it's easy for me to follow which X corresponds to which Y value. You may do the same for questions. You have a questions, if you have questions next to each other, and answers like to the side of the question, you may want to also alternate questions so that it is easy for students to follow. Whenever you have, the same is going to happen for your practice. You have 5 questions for them to answer, you will be alternating colors. So now imagine this is kind of done, right? Assuming that everything else, you've completed things, everything. And you have to protect. That's under review. Click on review tab. And you see what protect sheet. Now, you have 2 worksheets in one document. If you finished with one, don't click protect workbook because you won't be able to do anything on the second worksheet. Just protect this worksheet. So if you click protect sheet, it will ask you for a password. Now, here is the very important information for you. For assignment, you don't put a password so that I can look what you've done. Here is even more important information for you. For your students, you probably want to put a password. But if you forget this password, there is no way to restore it. You'll never can get back and change anything. So either use a password you always use, or you'll have to start over. Let's say you said, oh, I have this activity, I just want to change a couple of things. You won't be able to without password, okay? So click OK. So now it is protected. Now, here's the thing. Make sure, notice, sliders are working, right? Sliders are working, values are changing. You can type a name, John Smith. And now try to change anything else. Try to change instructions. It tells you cells, the chart protected. Try to change a graph. Student trying to click on a graph. Whatever they do, anywhere else they click, they cannot accidentally erase the values. They cannot accidentally change the formula. They cannot do anything but use the scrollers and put the name and date, and for you also put the answers to questions, right? How do you know whether you protected or did not protect or unlocked or did not lock? Tab key on your keyboard. If you click a tab key, it can only go through the cells which are available and nothing else. So you know exactly, so if it goes somewhere else, you know that something is wrong. Or if it doesn't go to the cell which needs to be open, you know you didn't unlock it, okay? So that's your check. And, well, I guess I didn't leave you time to work on this, but we have 4 minutes. I want to show you one more thing. Click unprotect. And since we didn't put a password, of course, it just doesn't ask for it. You will have to put footer and header. It's an information which is required. So I want to show you where that is. So go to insert. And do you see option under text, header and footer? Click on that. The header and footer are only visible in a print layout or when you actually physically insert them. Per assignment requirement, so this is like your reference. Students will never see it. But for me, you're going to put EDP, in this part, EDP647, right? You'll put your name here, okay? You'll put semester here. Fall 2014. Then you scroll down all the way to find your footer, where it says click add footer, and you'll put here CCSS, and you'll put a code here. If F, whatever code is, 6.8. Here you are going to put the actual standard statement. Copy and paste from standard. You may have to make font very small here so it fits. And then here you'll put your grade level, whatever, grade 9. So once again, how did we get here? Under insert, you had header and footer. Insert, header and footer. And then you're at the top. And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, let's keep scrolling until you see word click to add footer, and it will be here. They hide automatically. So if you go back to view normal, you'll notice there is no header and footer, so students are not going to see them. It's only me. It only shows in a print. So when you print this, it will show. But when you work on it online, it won't show. It shows you, it's fine. It shows you for print like how it would appear. If you don't like this, you can always, by the way, there's a full screen as well. You could always, don't worry about it. It's like when you open this document again, not cancel. Okay, how do I get out of this now? Okay, here we go. Because you use, it shows you what it does. It shows you guides how it would print. Like, so for example, but if you don't like this appearing like that, you can go to page layout and pretty much change it so that like make it larger. Like, see, like this thing right here, like you can say hide white space, and you can move those things around so that it shows only what students need to see. So it doesn't matter. For me, it doesn't matter. Normal view, and you're fine. Okay, just stay in the normal view so that everything shows the way you want it to show. And for students, since we are, you can also change to page layout to orientation to landscape, which is right now is. But you can also change and make a custom size and make it bigger so those lines don't appear on the screen. Because you can change whatever, like paper sizes, or just choose a custom. So we are like right now in letter. You can choose legal. You can choose size according to whatever you wanted to see. So, and these lines will disappear because they show printing. Okay, let me stop the video.